of prison, you're supposed to go like beat the shit out of the biggest guy to establish your dominance. You come on this podcast for the first time, and your video quality trumps that of all previous 446 guests. Anyone watching this can see it's just visual sex. And yeah, I just got, so you came in here and just gave me a black eye on my podcast and established dominance. So this is now Keith Cast, and I will hand over the keys. But introduce yourself, man. You're Keith Adams. You did, for everybody.
Wow.
You did the editing and the actual video recording and audio recording of when Dale and Joe Tedeye came out and to our mutual friend's place and shot all the guns. But introduce yourself, man.
Yeah. So reason being for the great video quality that you've pointed out, the jail reference. It's hilarious. I apologize.
No, it's awesome, dude. Alpha. Totally alpha.
But as you know, that's what I do for a living. So if, I do video production. So if I do something and my video quality is trash, then I should probably find, something else to do. That, and like yourself, I'm actually part of a small podcast as well. So whether it's audio, video, I use all this for that as well. So yeah, man, but met you. That was awesome.
That was fun as well.
That was awesome. I've gotten a chance to check out some of your podcasts. Dale and Joe are awesome. So I don't know that I can bring what they bring. They've had very interesting lives and great stories to tell. Dude, but nonetheless, thanks for inviting me to do this.
Yeah, dude, nobody can bring what they bring. I have guests from all walks of life, dude. I've literally had a guy that's walked on the moon, and he doesn't get as much views as Dale does. Nobody gives a shit. Dale is a Delta Force CIA contractor. All other guests fall by the wayside. I'm like, this is a guy that invented autonomous driving with DARPA, and people are like, cool, bring back on Dale. Bring Dale on. Dale's like, I shot a motherfucker in the face, and everybody's like, yeah. So I'm just like, you know what? I know where my bread's buttered. Just keep Dale on. That's what I'm gonna do.
It's hard to compete. It's hard to compete against that. So I'll fall in that bottom class of.
Everyone does. No, it's fine. It's myself included. Nobody comes close to Dale. I've begun to understood that it's kind of like the U.S. budget. It's like it's primarily at building like nuclear weapons and aircraft carriers, and it's like we do a bunch of little stuff on the side. We do some arts. We do some like community outreach, but mostly it's like we're just building massive machines. The rest is just kind of a formality. My podcast is a platform for Dale Comstock. All the other episodes are just a formality. I just fill the time. I just fill in the spaces. How do I get your video quality? Because I'm always trying to up and if you can't tell, I talk a lot. You kind of got to throw some elbows and interrupt me because I'll never shut up.
No, you're good.
How do I get quality? So like early episodes, you can see it's just me, recording with my MacBook, which I'm on now. Around Christmas, I got this puppy, good microphone. I got a better camera, a webcam, but it's still sitting on top of a MacBook. And then within the last 2 or 3 weeks, I got some like sound panels. Mm-hmm. And so the audio is a little better. I'm always trying to just make it better. So if it looks, my logic is if I make it look and good, sound enough, look good enough and sound good enough, people will ignore the shitty content and they'll just like the quality of the actual video file. They'll be like, this is crisp and clear.
They'll just watch this in amazement at how great it looks.
They're like, wow, look how clear look at that frame rate. The guy is clearly unstable. He's talking about aliens and interdimensional beings, but
right. Well,
it looks great.
So that's if you go check out our YouTube page, that's what you'll find. Crystal clear video, great audio, but a weirdo talking about aliens and all kinds of stuff. So
fuck yeah. What's the name of the podcast you're on, or what's the name of your podcast?
Acts 2 and 42. ACTS, like action, like Acts. It's a book in the Bible. It's a Christian podcast. So Acts 2, the word and the number 42. That's awesome. And it's pretty much just Christian discussion, some things that doesn't get covered, in church, and or you get kind of backlash for asking too many questions. Yeah. So, and just all around, just to link up with people, tell great stories and so forth. So,
it's, man, I went to private Catholic school for 12 years. I was raised Roman Catholic. And as I think most people do in my generation, I began questioning a lot of it in high school and became a devout atheist. I was pre-med in college, and that also served to kind of solidify what I thought at the time was, I was like, oh, the whole world it's just, the universe is just matter. There's four fundamental forces: gravitational, electrostatic, strong nuclear, weak nuclear. There's four forces, and they're just pushing around quarks and gluons, and consciousness is an aberration, and this means nothing. Unlike, I think, most people, I didn't necessarily see that as negative. I didn't see that. I was like, I'm a good person because I like to be good. I don't care.
Right.
But as time went on, when I was an atheist, I always wanted to believe in God. And all of my atheist friends did too. There was no like, there's no God, fuck you. It was like, no, I want to, I just don't.
Right.
And I've done psychedelics on 5 occasions in my life. But the first one was in 2013, and that showed me an experience. It wasn't out partying, it was like meditating in the woods. And that showed me, I was like, there's something here that I can't break down into an equation. Like, it was, the only thing I can say is, it was experiencing God. A couple months after that, I lost my brother to suicide, and that threw me just downward spiral, every drug I could get my hands on. Moved home in 2016. Everybody listening to this podcast is pulling their hair out because they've heard the story a million times. Moved home in 2016 up to Maryland because I was just going downhill fast. Kind of got my whole life back in order, and had a through like meditation, just kind of kept having experiences where I was like, man, like it feels like there's something else. It feels like, and then I slowly start to become agnostic, where I was like, okay, I can't for sure say that there's no God. And again, always wanted to believe in God. I'll rewind it a little bit. Not that you asked any of this, but I'll rewind it a little bit.
No, I'm interested though.
The night before my brother took his life, he took his life in Maryland, and I was down in Georgia visiting my girlfriend at the time. I was 599 miles away, and the night before, I had like an anxiety attack in my dream where it was almost, you're a camera guy, it was almost like I was following him around on like a quadcopter. It's a weird, but it was like I was looking over his shoulder almost. And I was seeing him in his room, and I was seeing him like, write a letter, and I was seeing him like going to get a gun, and I was seeing him going to get into his car and go to the location. And like my girlfriend woke me up because she was sleeping. She had her head on my chest, and she woke up because my heartbeat was so strong it woke her up.
Wow.
And then she woke me up, and she was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I just had like a terrible dream, but I didn't tell her because it was just a dream.
Right.
Well, I now know, I knew very soon after, just kind of looking at all of our last communications with him, I pieced it all together that it was happening in real time. And what I was seeing is indeed what happened. 599 miles away.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like I was thinking of my grandma today, and then I met someone also named Dolores. Like, those are fun little, maybe they give you some hope, sure. This was like, and I didn't tell anyone about it for a couple years because I was like, they're going to throw me in an insane asylum. Purpose is actually with Dale, of all people, Dale, like rock hard, like, all-American Dale.
Right.
Dale's had insane experiences similarly to like his dad having a heart attack, and Dale, on the other side of the world, probably killing some foreign leader, like, dressed in black with a sniper rifle. But Dale had like a panic attack and like called and found out his dad on the other side of the planet just had a heart. Point is, I finally had on Charlie Duke, episode 216. Charlie Duke was the 10th man to walk on the moon. Okay. Just absolute legend, total stud. And, but we were talking, and, he actually, I watched interviews with him, and he went through something that I had feared. I was like, what if the podcast finally works? Like, I moved home at like the lowest of the low, like girlfriend broke up with me, overweight, on drugs, depressed. And I was like, what if I somehow managed to like, lose weight, sober up, move out, build a podcast, and now here we are. But in the back of my mind, I always feared, and at this point, this podcast has just turned into therapy. So thank you, Dr. Keith, for being my therapist. But
Likewise.
At some moment, the fear was in my head of what happens if I get everything I ever wanted? What if I become the next Joe Rogan? What if I've just got dumb money? What if it's not enough?
Yeah.
And there's, at least now I have the illusion of like, I can just pursue that and I can kind of put my worries to the side. Mm-hmm. Well, who better to talk to than Charlie Duke? To have the right stuff, what the Air Force calls it's, you want to be an X-plane pilot. You want to move from like, you basically want to be the Dale of pilots. Right. Well, you have to have the right stuff. And that's what Charlie Duke was. And then, if you want to be the Delta Force of pilots, you go to the moon. Fuck going to the sky. We are going to another planet. Right. And you're going to walk there, play golf, hold up 2 middle fingers to the Soviet Union, and then come back to the U.S. And that's what Charlie Duke did. And he talked about in an interview, how depressed he was because when he came back, he realized there was nowhere else to go. There is no raise. What? You want me to fly your experimental aircraft? I've walked on the moon. There's nothing else you can do. Yeah. He fell into a deep depression. He started drinking a lot. He said he was a terrible dad. And then finally, and there is a purpose to this whole rant I'm going on. Finally, he said he had lost his faith, and he said one day he just asked God to come back into his life. And he looked at me and he was telling me the story because I recapped it with him, and he was telling me the story. And this is a guy, again, this isn't some moron like me. This is a guy that the United States trusted to go to the moon.
Right.
He looked me dead in the eye with the same conviction that, he would say, like, initiate barrel roll or, aft 1 degree thrusters. Mm-hmm. He just looked at me like an equation and goes, yeah, and it worked. So, Tommy, because I told him everything I just told you, he goes, Tommy, just ask God to come back in your heart and he'll come back in. Just like that. And I was like...
Facts.
And I was just like, okay, I want to believe, but I don't... And when anyone else would ever tell me, like, well, maybe find God again, I'd be like, oh, would you just fuck off?
Right,
like,
right.
And so finally, I was just like, when Dale tells me how to shoot, I take his advice, because perhaps he knows a thing or two.
Yep.
I'm like, when this guy, who is, by the way, he's not just, like, old and losing. I think in the last year, he joined like a defense contractor on the chairman of the board. Charlie Duke's like 90 fucking years old. So wow. I was like, okay, when that animal of a man tells me, and a scientific man says, just ask God to come back into your heart. And I've said this on this podcast, and I'm sure I've probably lost people because they're like, oh God, I hope this doesn't turn into just like Tommy turns into a preacher.
Right.
Well, I meditate every day. I've been meditating every day since 2008. The day after I did the Charlie Duke podcast, it's like, all right, God, will you come back into my life?
And he said no.
He told me to fuck off, and he killed everyone I knew. I'm now in prison. No.
Right.
And it sounds retarded. Mm-hmm. And I have felt a presence in my life since the day I asked God to come back into my heart. And for everyone listening, this isn't me turning into an evangelical. That's not what this podcast is. We're still going to continue to talk about aliens and AI and satanic pedophiles and nuclear war and genocide. Don't worry.
Sounds like our channel.
Yeah. Don't worry, guys. We're not. I'm still wearing a UFO hoodie. Don't worry. We're not straying from it. But as a former pre-med, atheist, agnostic person, meditates every day, has done psychedelics, has really tried to explore the interior of my mind. I don't know how else to explain it than to say I have felt now it's not like it was a lightning strike of ecstasy and now I'm like walking around like Buddha. Not at all. I still have terrible days. I wake up and I'm like, oh, I gotta shit. Like, I gotta have diarrhea. Fuck. Like, but every day there is a sort of peace that in all things I do, I'm always reminded that like I'm in the world, not of the world. Like I'm here, but this life is temporary. This is not permanent. This is a shadow over a reflection. I'm not going to be here forever. And I know what's on the other side. I've experienced just pure ecstatic love and peace in meditation. And I know that's what God is. Mm-hmm. And I know I've just now been like yelling at you for 15 minutes straight, but to circle back around, I actually can kind of, because I don't want to come across as like pandering. So when you say you do like a Christian podcast, like this is not like a conventional Christian story, like, I found the Lord. Like, no, like it was a crazy experience of drugs and depression and suicidal thoughts and talking to an astronaut, and somehow I'm here. But I don't know what to tell people other than Charlie Duke gave me a prescription and I fulfilled it, and it's working. Maybe it's delusion, I don't know. But you know what? Whether it's real or fake, I like the subjective experience of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna keep on going on every day asking God for guidance, and I'm not gonna force it down anyone else's throat. That's your own journey. And it's your own desire or lack thereof. But so I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with giving you all that. Just kind of threw that on your plate, and now I'm like, take it away, Keith. But,
right. Well, I mean, that's you mentioned like I don't know how people kind of come to you when you're either atheist or lost faith or whatever, and they want you to ask God in your heart, and and it's just I don't. Right. I don't think it's like, man, have a little perspective. What do you think if you were that person? How welcome would you you be?
You're like, fuck off.
Right. So, I don't know, any Christian to some extent is going to care, to hear a story like that. I mean, that's kind of, to be honest, that's what we're all after. We want to hear that, at least coming to God, if not Christ, but coming to God, away from atheism, God forbid. So, but it's like, to ask that. So I'm glad you share, because I wouldn't come on here asking, would you call him into your heart? If you said if the story had ended that you were still an atheist, I would just have some questions.
Sure.
As far as what your perspective was, you know what I mean? Not so much to change your mind, but sure. Just have an interest in that. And I think that's something that, Christians in general, the church in general, kind of misses the target, like sales is terrible. Like if you were to do these things in the sales world, in the marketing world, they would just be the most atrocious sales tactics ever, so
company would file Chapter 13.
Yeah. It's just crazy. But, and I think that kind of was what kind of started us to do what we're doing. Not that we're saving the world or anything, but, just to have these discussions, because I think it's the Barna Group has done surveys and studies, for decades now. And one they did concerning the faith was about the unchurched, people not in church that might just believe in God. They have faith, they believe in God. They're not necessarily atheists or whatever, but, to the church, if you're not sitting in a pew on Sunday morning, you're not with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not currently one of those. I have been in the past, but I'm not currently one of those. Matter of fact, the church doesn't like me too much.
I haven't been to. I mean, aside from maybe like funerals, I haven't been to a mass service in years, and I don't personally. I don't really see the need. I don't feel like I need like a middleman. I feel like I can just talk to the big man upstairs.
Right.
Direct line of communication.
Yep.
Like we text directly.
Right. Yeah. Aside from prayer, meditation, and things, that was what one of these studies had found, is that most of this quote unchurched group, it's just this culture today, not millennials or Gen X necessarily, but just the culture today. We have like a wealth of knowledge at our fingertips. The press of a button, we can find out any answer we need. We don't need, in this case, that one guy standing at the podium to be the source of all information, to much less the gatekeepers, to heaven and hell, So it's like group discussion. I mean, you can go to YouTube and let's say you want to know about guns. Do you follow one guy on YouTube? And everything he says, that's what you do. It's gospel. Maybe it's Dale.
Maybe it is.
Dale and Joe. Dale and Joe. Their perspective channel.
Okay, but yeah, that's an exception. Yeah.
Right. But you get what I'm saying. Like, so you're going to follow this channel, that channel, this channel, that channel, and kind of glean the best of what you see from different people. And that's kind of what we do now. So the kind of the model of Sunday morning with one guy. I don't even know that it's biblical per se, because it was more of a group gathering where whoever was inspired, to give words, gave words, But yeah, so I don't think it's going to work a decade or two from now, if it even is working anymore, Yeah. So I wanted to house kind of group discussion, even if one of us thought we knew what was right, and here's this is what that verse says, and that's what you got wrong. But that should still happen in a dialogue, discussion process. Not one person, being the Moses on the mountaintop.
Yeah, and you can kind of get lost in going through the motions, right? It's like I go to mass, I put my fingers in the holy water, I do the thing, I kneel, I sit, I stand, I kneel, I sit, I do the thing, and it's like, do you actually feel? It's like going to the gym. Like, I try not to go through the motions. I'm like, if my mind's wandering, I know I'm not working out hard enough, because I'm just going through them. I have to be actively thinking, Jesus, I hate this, sucks. Like, if I'm not actively like, then it's like, then I'm not working out. Otherwise, I'm just going through the motions, and that is, to me, that's worse than a day off, because you're just wasting energy, not growing. So, yeah, it's you can turn it into like a personal, it's like this podcast, right? It's, if you ever wanted to get into entertainment in the past 50 years, it was like, you have to be on the evening news, and tonight we are blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there's commercial breaks, everyone has to tune in at a certain time, but now there's the internet. Now anyone can download anything, and you might be listening to this podcast today, May 17th, 2021. You might be listening to this in 3 years from now. They might be playing this on the documentary of Where Did It All Go Wrong? Tommy Kerrigan, a story tonight on 60 Minutes. It's this. You might be watching this one day on How to Catch a Killer or something, right? But the point is like, you can kind of put out your own information, and you can put it out in your own style. Like, you and I had no topic beforehand. It was just like, you were like, what do you want to do? And I was like, let's shoot the shit. And you were like, cool. And I was like, cool.
Why does he want me on here?
Yeah, you're like, who is this psychopath? Does he know where I live? Are my doors locked, right? It's, generally, But no, man, it's because I just like to do what we're doing. Like, I had no intention of talking about God today, but here we are. And you can kind of use that same informality and kind of chaotic organization you can use that approach to God. You don't have to, the evening news is church. You have to go on Sunday at this time, and you have to dress up. Actually, it's a lot like the news. You have to dress up in your best. You got to show up at a perfect time. You can't be late. It's your prime time. It's Sunday prime time, baby. Like, you got to be there for the big game. Versus, if you kind of take it into your own hands, like I'm trying to do now, I can meditate at 1:30 p.m., and I can think about Xbox games for a while until my mind starts to focus, and then I can remember, like, oh yeah, God, please continue to be in my heart, and walk with Christ, and please let me to be a better man, and let me be the strongest person I can, and let me try to help those who can't help themselves, and let me be open to change, and let me drop my ego, and let me soberly examine my life and my flaws, try not to hold grudges, try to not be insulted when people offer advice or criticism, and let me generally be thankful for what I have, and let me try to leave this world a better world than I found it, even if it means one day there's like a family in Africa that now has drinking water because I was able to buy them a well. Like, little shit like that. That's not the same as coat and tie sitting in the pew singing songs in Latin. I'm sitting there in a UFO hoodie on my pillow, and I'm like, what up, Big G? You know who it is. It's Tommy. Right? What up? What's going on? Please allow me to be a better person. Don't kill me. And I hope I have a good podcast today. Thanks, Big Dog.
Yeah, right.
But, right, it's that you kind of have to take your own approach to it.
And if it's spiritual and the hoodie's material, what does the hoodie matter? What is matter. You understand? I don't know if I still am, but I'm an ordained elder. Like, I'm a pastor. Like, it depends on what denomination you are and what they call them, but ordained minister of some type.
Sure.
And so in in the church that I was in, I had to help give, I guess, in It's Mass in Catholicism, but communion, the Lord's Supper, communion, the wine and the bread, and I did it in a gray T-shirt. And he was a deacon, but he pulled me aside. He was a buddy of mine. He said, Keith, you can't go out there looking like that. And I had before, but he was just like, man, I mean, there's people looking at you. And I looked at him dead in his eyes, and I said, yeah, I know. And this is what I want them to see. Yeah. You got all kinds of people out there, and some of them can't afford a suit or can't afford whatever. And it's like, I'm no better than they are. You're no better than they are. And I don't want them to think there's this threshold that if you don't have a suit on, you're no one special.
You're not worthy.
Or whatever. So I was like, no, I do this intentionally, and I'm going to keep wearing a T-shirt,
That's beautiful.
Well, the people didn't think so.
Well, then fuck them. Or not fuck them. Let them do their own thing, and you'll do yours, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, it's right. I mean, but isn't that kind of like, Jesus comes and he's just like walking around, no shoes long. I mean, if we saw him today, we'd be like, oh, look at that fucking millennial on Venice Beach. Like, that's what he would be. He'd be like, hey, guys, I think that we should all, forget our material things because it's easier to pass through a needle of a whatever. And maybe we should help each other out and, be thankful for that the kingdom isn't with all of us, that you don't need to go to church. You can just go inside and meditate. And, there's peace. And we'd be like, security, he has no shoes on. He's not wearing a mask. Get him away from me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's no... The idea of like the idea of the Vatican itself, to me, and I've always thought this, seems like the absolute antithesis of like Jesus, right? Like $40 billion of gold in like subterranean vaults, like
night and day, polar opposite.
What part of... No, we must have like 100 million tons of Italian marble shifted, and each little, enclave has a statue of unimaginable wealth. And it's like, oh, whoa, so you're telling me we could like build roads and schools and antibiotics for like poor people? And well, no, this is a priceless treasure. Well, I thought it was immaterial. I thought none of it's going with us. No, not this stuff. This stuff's great. Your stuff is immaterial, which is why you need to give it to us. We're going to hand around the basket. But we're going to somehow get the entire Vatican through the eye of the needle. We'll do it. We don't know how yet.
Yep. Just shut up and listen to me.
Shut up.
Do as I say. I'll get you there.
Just shut the fuck. Don't look. Hey, I know we have a rampant problem with pedophilia, and I know we're actively covering it up. It wasn't just a one-off thing. I know we're actively shifting them around like pawns.
Yep.
Ignore that.
Yep.
And that's also not to say that they're all like that. I mean, I know Father Lopez from high school. I mean, that man was the embodiment of like living God's word. Like, so it's just like you can't say all cops are like pigs or something, right? And not all millennials are like dirty communists. Like it's just they're not. You can't.
Most of them.
Yeah, most of them, sure, but it's like not everyone that has a gun is like a racist, Confederacy. It's like sometimes I just like to go shoot with Dale. Like it's it's, but yeah, man, it's. Yeah, so that's what Acts is, right? Your podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that whole that's a book in the Bible in the New Testament.
I know that.
And it was basically the story of the beginning of the church, and mainly church fellowship and the acts of the apostles, the things that the apostles did after Jesus sent them forward. And the chapter and verse that we are based around is one based around fellowship, all coming together, and that's like you said, it's not necessarily Sunday morning in the building. It was from house to house. The only reason they met in the temple was because most of them were Jews. It was several, I don't know the time span, but the original faith was all Jewish. It wasn't until later that the Gentiles came in, that, Gentile people could convert and be Christian. So it was mostly Jewish. So they did go to temple, but they met continuously in their homes. And that was really, the real fellowship. But, where there's two or three, if you got two or three, no one can walk the walk alone. But all you need is two or three. You don't need 20,000 in the stadium or 200 or 300 on Sunday morning. And if you're not there, I had a friend from Nigeria I've known for 10, 12 years. And I was with him the other day, and he says, this whole thing that if you don't see me on Sunday morning in your building, I don't understand that. What if I'm in church in Nigeria? Or what if I'm over here, but God only recognizes this building on this day? No, that's you. That's you. And now I'm basically trying to prove myself to you through attendance. You know, I could be anywhere doing anything in the name of God, and you wouldn't know, but you would condemn me for it.
Yeah.
It's a little weird.
Yeah, right. It's almost like bringing ramen noodles to a homeless shelter, but not posting a picture on Instagram.
You got to post a picture.
Yeah. Is it even real? Did you even feed a homeless?
Right. Never happened.
It's like, hey, don't give me that back. I know you're hungry. Get the camera ready.
Yep.
Which, I mean, also, I'm not shitting on that. I mean, if people only do it for Instagram likes, I mean, I doubt the homeless guy gives a fuck who's doing it for him.
Some do. Yeah.
No, I'm sure, but that's what I mean.
At least it's done. It's being done.
That's what I mean. It's easy to poke fun at, but sometimes I'll see like young influencers and everyone's like, they're just doing it for Instagram. I'm like, yeah, and that is kind of like shitty, but like, at least someone's now bringing food to the homeless shelter. Right. Like, is it better? Is it better for no one to do it and us be like, ha? Now there are no influencers. Shut up! I know you're starving, but like, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much time we have, but I'm interested, in your perspective, I guess, as far as not necessarily theism, but, the relationship between atheism and intelligent design, maybe going into, some type of theistic belief. But because I know, science, you mentioned like going to college and hearing this, and it's only this, and this. Science kind of has had a grip on that narrative for, 50 to 100 years now.
Sure.
And it's been the last 20 to 40 years, I think, slowly they've lost that grip to say intelligent design advocates and information. So I don't know.
Are you asking what I think?
Yeah, sure.
To me, I would say in a sense, it's kind of a cop out. I believe in God. I believe God has come back into my life, but I take an agnostic approach to it in the same way that, to me, it's the most scientific thing I can do. Is when you go into, for instance, I co-authored toxicology research in college, the effects of salinity on nickel toxicity to the 2 Eurohalien fish species Cryptolebius marmolatus and Fungulus heteroclitus. It's all about just,
God bless you.
We were poisoning fish with nickel, and then but sometimes they weren't just in water. Sometimes it was salt water. And then if you were in salt water, sometimes it was less poisonous.
Okay.
Why? Because if I have a co-authored publication, I can go to medical school. Why? Shut up. It doesn't matter.
Wow.
The point is you go into it, you cannot go into it with a model in your mind of, this is how it's going to work. This is how the salinity is going to save them. This is how it's not going to, because if you're doing that, if you came into this podcast, like today, we're going to be talking about video quality and microphone quality. Like, you close off all possibilities to what this podcast could have been, to what I think has been a beautiful conversation, right?
Yeah.
So when you go into the lab and you're pipetting fucking silver iodide or whatever into these, you can't go in there and go, and this one's probably going to kill them, this one's not, because you're going in with a model that's affecting your ability to see what is actually happening, the scientific method. So instead, you just cover all the data, the dissolved oxygen, the carbonite or the carbon levels, the CO2 levels, the whatever, see everything. You just cover all the data, but you don't make any interpretations. And then after 18 months of daily data collection, then you start to look at trends and you go, oh, magnesium, that was basically like a bulletproof vest for them. Okay, that did nothing. Calcium did nothing. Potassium did nothing. Oh, that one made it worse. Like, so you just observe it with a sober, unbiased mind. So I look at all of this. I look at the universe. I look at everything I've learned in my life. And, in the first 15 years of my life, I would have told you, yes, look at this. This is intelligent design. This is God. In the next 5 to 10 years of my life, I would have told you this is all scientific. It's just Newtonian physics, Euclidean space-time, and matter governed by four basic forces. Okay. After that, I would have told you, I don't know, man, maybe it's all psychedelics. It seems like the mind is where it's at. Now, I can only say that all those experiences have brought me to where I am now. So I don't know. Is it intelligent design? Is it chaotic? Or does it not matter? Is it the purpose of the pursuit of it is what, the pursuit of money? You can keep going and going and going. Charlie Duke, I would imagine he could argue that the scientific method is what brought him to God. He went to the highest rung of achievement and then saw that that's not where the answer was. So for me, it might have been the scientific method of finding that even if you can break down the universe into a non-intelligent design, but rather just a bunch of science, that itself might be the thing that shows you this isn't the explanation. This is a schematic. This is a blueprint for how the world works, but it's not the answer to what am I, what is peace, what is salvation. So is it intelligent design? Simply, it can definitely look like that. But it's also, I think, the anthropomorphic principle where it's like, well, life can only arise in this universe. So, of course, we're going to look at it and be like, oh, if a proton was 1/1,000,000,000 of a gram less, we wouldn't be here. Therefore, it's intelligent design. Well, if the proton weighed 1/1,000,000,000 of a gram less, we would have never arisen to have this observation. But the point of me saying all of this is, I don't know, and I'm not entirely sure it matters. It might be the actual pursuit of trying to find out whether it is or not intelligent design. It might be the very pursuit of going, oh, this isn't salvation. Because whether you can find out for sure that it's not intelligent design or you can find out for sure it is, it might be the very infinite task of studying for you to realize that, man, I'm not finding peace. I'm not finding love. I'm not finding salvation. I'm not finding warmth. I'm not finding the watch the loving gaze of a creator over me. So to me, I don't think it matters. But again, in sort of a meta way, I am taking that scientific approach to even this. Where it's, I can't go in and say magnesium's for sure going to save the fish. I don't know. So right now I'm still just kind of collecting data. Maybe it's I'm having on Dale talking about shooting terrorists in the face. Maybe I'm talking to Keith about, is there intelligent design? Right now I'm trying to act as a neutral observer and take in all the information. Right now I'm leaning towards there is a God, but I'm not really sure any of this matters. Does that make it? Did I answer that question at all, or was that just gibber?
I mean, like you said, in a meta way, considering all things. I mean, a lot of it's above my pay grade. To be quite frank, I don't want to say I'm a student of it. I don't know what you want to call it. Enthusiast, interested, working on a few books. I don't know if you heard. I'm sure you probably have. Dr. Stephen Meyer. I'm working on his latest book. But the Return of the God Hypothesis. And he's been a proponent of intelligent design, and more so a critic of, kind of mainstream science, chaos, random order, random, the opposite order. But
entropy, enthalpy.
Right. So, and I don't want to, it's really hard. And I think that's the problem of a lot of these conversations is not recognizing you're biased. Not checking your bias at the door, and saying, okay, let me see what they say. I try to do that. And this is why, like, within the faith, I've changed my views on several different doctrines, because there's, different denominations teach different things. And even within a denomination, there's different views on, say, end times, resurrection. And I used to think this way. And it wasn't until I kind of checked that bias and said, I know what I've been told, but let me see what they're saying. Let me see the evidence that they have and the reason why they support this idea. And then I turn and look, I say, okay, all right, well, I'm not on that side anymore, because this information actually beats that. It's like data, that beats this. I trust this more. I believe this more. But you can't, and some things you're going to say, like in your case, there's so many things to be considered. I don't know that it's a black and white answer of yes or no of intelligent design or, picking a model per se. So anyway, you didn't have to. I'm just curious from someone. I don't have that experience and that perspective. So I'm just curious.
Yeah. The smart, I won't say his name, the smartest person I've ever met in my life is a guy I went to high school with, and I lived with him for a year in college, and he's a physician now. I mean, the way I describe it is like, you ever been near like a Shelby Cobra or like an old sports car at like a stoplight? They're just sitting there. And they're not even driving, and you just hear it, and you're like, this sounds like a dragon, and it's just like when it's just sitting there. You're like, that thing idling sounds more beastly than my all out Civic. Like if I floor my Civic, I can't sound like that, and that thing's just sitting there at a light.
Right.
This guy's brain was like that. You would just be sitting near him, and it's not like he was gloating or anything. You would just be sitting there talking about everyday stuff. Like, yeah, man, like gas prices are crazy. He'd be like, yeah, and if you just kind of sat there for a minute, you'd be like, you could almost hear his brain just like a genius, a fucking genius. He's also one of the most devout Christians I've ever met. He never once sort of swayed from it like I did which I don't think is right or wrong. I think that's his experience.
Right.
The point is he's the most intelligent person I've ever met. And I remember when I asked him, I was like, dude, you could be an investment banker. You could be ritired at 22. Like, you're a guy that could pull off the 2008 financial crisis and pocket it. And he was like, I'm aware. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, why are you going to be a doctor? He's like, well, one, I enjoy biology. But he's like, two, I believe God put me here to do this, to care for those, to use my intellect to care for those who maybe can't. And maybe it's not a private hospital, someone who's going to come in and pay the bill. Maybe it's someone on Medicare or someone who's homeless without an ID. Saints and sinners, all the same. But I remember he used to say, this is the line, and then we gotta wrap this one up in a minute. But his line is, I remember asking him, I was like, why are you so devoutly religious? And he was like, through personal experience, through nothing that you could ever find in a textbook, I just believe there's a God. I feel God. I know God's there. I don't care what I see out here. And I was like, so is there any way of finding it out in this life? And he said, no. And this is why. He goes, as you learn more, it's an asymptotic curve. As you learn more data, you can get closer to an explanation for all of it, but you also start to realize there are that many more loose ends. And he goes, and it goes up almost vertically, like never-ending interest. It's an exponential spike. And as you get more data, you can never go to the speed of light because your mass increases proportionally. He was like, you can, up until the moment of death, where you can learn everything you can. You could spend 100 years studying all day, every day, and you'll always just be right there. And I was like, so even if we like push lifespan to 1,000 years, he was like, you would just get that much farther on the curve, but you would never go over. If I go halfway from here to the wall, I'm going to move 2 feet. If I go halfway again, I'm going to move 1 feet. If I go halfway again, I'm going to go 6 inches, 3 inches, 1.5. Down to where you're moving fractions of an atom, but it doesn't matter because by definition, you're going halfway to the point. He said, the very purpose of that realization that you can never figure it out is in itself the answer. It's, hey, you can't figure it out here. You divided 1 by 3. Your calculator says 0.333. If you got a bigger screen on your calculator, it would just keep saying threes. So eventually you can scroll down the screen for a mile before you go, you know what? I think the lesson here is that we can't find the answer. And that is the answer. So the smartest person I've ever met in my life gave me that answer. And I think it's important to seek your own answers. But right now, I would say I'm leaning towards that, in that I don't think I can. When I did psychedelics, that didn't give me the answers. That made me realize there's way too many answers. So it's, I don't know. It might be your journey of trying to find whether or not there's an intelligent design that is the 333. It might be your journey of maybe inversely, maybe saying, no, you have to go to church in a suit and tie. That might be your journey. But I think it's the actual journey itself that eventually is like kind of cold water on your face. You go, I don't think we're finding the answer, man. This guy that keeps writing me IOUs, I don't think he's paying me back.
Right.
To me, that is like the wink and a smile from a god. It was just like, yeah, man, keep. You're almost at the end of the rainbow. It keeps going over the horizon, but just surely you're gonna find the pot of gold. To me, that's kind of God, like nudging you in the side, like he's kind of saying, like, enjoy it. It's creation. Enjoy it. It's this. Who else could pull off that kind of trick but a god? A god who's like a game you can't beat. It's like a video game developer who leaves an Easter egg. To me, that's open to interpretation. But what I would kind of take a page out of Buddha. Don't trust what's in any book. Don't trust what any preacher says. Don't trust what any teacher or guru says. Confirm it with your own observations and trust that above all. So, even after everything I'm saying, to you, the listener, don't fucking give me or Keith, don't give us 2 seconds of your time. What does your observations confirm? Do you feel that I can't explain where the universe is from or why electrons spin but I feel like in my heart, I feel that there is a God? Well, then that's your answer, and take it to the bank. And if your answer is, I feel like we're in a cold, dead universe, then that's your answer. Take it to the bank. I don't know. My experiences, at least now at 30 years old, tell me that the answer cannot be found within this world. A fish cannot possibly understand the nature of a world outside of its fishbowl. I don't know if that answers your question. I don't think it can answer your question. I don't think that the answer. I don't think the question can.
I think I need to take some psychedelics in order to unravel.
Fuck yeah, man! Hey, man, Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, the Harvard psychologists who arguably set off the '60s. They're both fired from Harvard for giving LSD to patients. They both took psychedelic mushrooms, Tiana lactica, I think it's called, flesh of the gods, in like the early 60s. They both said these were Harvard, these guys were the highest rung. They said, we learned more in 7 hours on mushrooms than we did in 27 years of cognitive therapy at Harvard.
Wow.
Take from that what you will. I am not a medical professional. And
Right.
And for all listeners, you cannot sue me in court.
Right.
In 10 years, there's going to be like the mesothelioma commercials. Were you a subscriber to Tommy's podcast between the years 2019 and 2025? You may be entitled to cash money. Was your brain fried by psychedelics because of this man? It's just a mugshot. I don't know, man. That's we got to wrap this one up for now, dude. I would absolutely love to have you back on, and yeah. Hold on, let me stop recording. Keith Adams, everybody. I'll put your all your information in the description and shit. Hold on, I gotta tell you something real quick. So I'm gonna stop.
Cool. Thanks, man.